Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm Dear Darling, as you'll see what's going on on our lovely island of Fawnhollow today, where we'll be vibing out as per usual. I don't know what we're going to talk about today. I mean, you know, as I always say, you know, that's becoming a sort of trope in of itself of the way I start these videos. But I've got to make sure I actually face the microphone. This is something that was brought up in comments that sometimes my audio volume is all over the place, and I'm pretty sure it's mostly because if I have a tendency to look out the window like this or something like this, or look to the side if I'm trying to think about something to say. But you know, I've got to remain focused, looking forward, so you can actually hear me in full quality rather than, you know, actually just leaning away and things like that. But yeah, what should we talk about today? You know what, this really random thought I had while I was eating lunch, because I was using a knife and fork, and you were like, whoa, revolutionary, whoa, crazy. A lot of times I do prefer to use chopsticks actually when I eat food, and you might be like, really? With anything? I'm like, yeah, with anything, like with pasta, and you'd be like, with pasta? Yeah, I kind of prefer using chopsticks rather than a fork and knife. I don't know, I'm just more used to it now. Certainly, so, you know, even random things which you might tend to use with a fork and knife, I will possibly use chopsticks for. But no, I was just eating some sausages for lunch, and I was using a fork and knife, and it just brought me to, I randomly had a flashback to a conversation I had when I was over at a friend's house back in primary school. So the general premise of this is basically table manners, and more specifically the table manner of which way round you hold a knife and fork, because I don't know why. It's just something that's been told since I was young, that you're meant to hold your knife with your dominant hand and then your fork with your non-dominant hand. I don't know really if that's meant to, how it works. I don't actually know if it's dominant or if it's right or left, but still. For me, being right-handed, that means knife in right hand, fork in left hand. I remember being at a friend's house in primary school, and he had a load of brothers, so he what is this? Please don't leave. I like other options. Go get it. It's a fantastic other option. But no, he had a load of brothers, so, you know, we had a rather big dining table, the entire family. And I remember one of the conversation being why we have to hold the knife with a certain hand. And I remember his brother, which was just older than him, was like, oh, I'm pretty sure I know. And then he was like, isn't it something you're meant to... It's unsafe otherwise to hold a knife with your non-dominant hand. I remember the older brothers above him just made fun of him for that. But that stuck in my mind, because I'm like, you know, that seems like a perfectly plausible, random reason that, you know, that it would even matter which sort of dominant hand you use to hold a fork and knife in. And anyway, ever since that day, you know, it's because I remember that's how the conversation started. It was because I did it the other way around. I held my fork in my right hand and my knife in my left hand. And we were like, oh, dear darling, you know, you do it backwards compared to usually. I was like, yeah, it was like, yeah, is that wrong? Obviously, because, you know, my parents are Chinese, they're not going to care about that sort of thing. They don't know about British manners and table manners necessarily, or this very, very specific niche thing. Because who cares, is basically the long and short answer of it. And then that sort of sparked the conversation. And then since that day, I was like, oh, you know, it's the right thing to do. So that's why, I hold it around a certain way. And then I caught myself, you know, because I like chopped sausage, and then I was going to eat it just, you know, using a fork. And then for some reason, I switched my fork from my left hand to my right hand, because I was only using a fork to pick up the sausage. And I was just thinking to myself, that's a really strange thing to do, isn't it? You know, you got the rules being like, oh, you know, you must use a knife in your right hand and you must use a fork in your left hand, except for when you're only using a fork. I default to using a fork in my right hand because no one ever told me that which way round it's meant to be in table manners, and my right hand is my dominant hand, so I feel like I have more control when I'm trying to eat food. Although, to be honest, sometimes... What I'm trying to do is basically anytime I'm doing an activity where I default to using my dominant hand, but it's not one which needs a precision of a dominant hand, aka not writing or something like that, I will use my non-dominant hand for it, just to get used to it. So brushing my teeth, instead of using my right hand, I'll use my left hand, just to, you know, I want my left hand to get some dexterity practice in there. I want it, it's not going to be as dexterous as my right hand, I'm not going to be writing on my left hand anytime soon, but just to be able to have the same sort of level of dexterity and hand-eye coordination, I think on my left hand would make more sense. So, you know, things like that, things like eating, I will try and use my left hand for. Things just like holding stuff in general, I will use left hand in operating things. And yeah, so just because, not really anything, no other sort of reason for it. Sometimes I'll even use my mouse left-handed just to try and get some practice, but it's a bit weirder with this mouse I'm using, because it's clearly made for right-handed people, because it's kind of formed around your hand that way. Yeah, it's not only for dexterity on my left hand, but it's also because I don't want to develop carpal tunnel on my right hand, and using my right hand for everything is a good way to do that, especially because so many of my hobbies require the use of my right hand. So things like drawing and stuff like that, which is why I'm like trying to be more consciously ergonomic with my setup and things like that. Hello, phone. Oh, I got a message. I should reply to that. I'll reply to that afterwards. Oh my god, where do I even put my phone? I don't know. Yeah, so ever since that day, you know, and at my friend's house, I've always just like knife in right hand, fork in left hand. And, you know, it just is a constant, because I don't know if you've ever been to any formal fancy dinners, but I certainly have, and that's the way they lay out the knives and forks. So it's not even dominant and subdominant hand, it's just knife on right, fork on left, table manners. It's what you're meant to do. But why? I don't really know. I mean, there's a lot of other table manners, which I'm sure all of the ideas are myths. Like, I'm sure that, like, that friend's brother who brought up the idea of being, like, unsafe in a non-dominant hand, that perfectly seems like a plausible explanation for what is a very random tradition, I suppose, in the first place. And when I say plausible, I don't mean it's a good reasoning. You know, that was obviously like bizarre, because, you know, what if you're left-handed, or like, you know, it's just like a butter knife. Why does it really matter which hand you hold it in the first place? But it sounds plausible, as in like it's believable that some like very traditional, you know, very traditionalist sort of table manners people just invented it as a way to, you know, I don't know, stick it to poor people or something, you know. Some rich medieval aristocrats invented like table manners, so then like, and if ever someone who was not, you know, a lower class person came to eat a fancy dinner with them, they'd be like, oh, you're using a fork and knife wrong. How droll, or something like that. Which, you know, is obviously how a lot of random traditions, I'm sure, end up being the case, because, you know, it's just sort of the things which get passed on. I mean, you don't really pass on. I mean, it would be hard to pass on manners if they never existed, I suppose, in the first place. But, you know, those ones don't really matter. There's other ones like elbows on the table. That one, like, I don't know why that exists, but I know there's always like this sort of thing being like, oh, it's because back in the olden days, like in the lower class sailors were often like lower class people who, you know, would like use their elbows to stabilize their bowls while they ate food or whatever, and then it was seen like you're not on a boat, you know, you don't need to do that. It's a sign of disrespect or something. And another thing, chewing with your mouth open. That's certainly one which, even if it is a stupid traditional reason for it existing, I think is one that should stay, because I don't want to see your chewed up food in your mouth, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I don't think anyone does, so, you know, continue chewing with your mouth closed. Elbows on table, I don't really care. I don't really do it because, like, at home, I don't really mind, you know, I'll do it, but, you know, if I'm on my phone or something like that. Out in public, I don't really do it, depending on, like, on what the table is. Sometimes the tables are kind of dirty, and that sort of thing, so I don't really want to touch them more than I have to. And, you know, I just abide by general table manners when I'm outside anyway, because I'm just like, it's not that big a deal to me to abide by them. Like, the only ones which are important, which I think people think about, are, like, elbows on table and don't talk with your mouth full and that sort of thing. I don't think people even pay attention to a knife and fork one, I'm going to be perfectly honest. But still, it's just like, I just do it like instinctively now. I don't know. I just guess it's been built into me. Just so, because the situations where it matters, you're going to want to follow it because it's not worth a fight. And the situation where it doesn't matter if you follow it or not. So, you know, you don't pay attention to that. So you might as well just sort of like in your brain have the programming default to following the manners. Unless it's like uncomfortable, then, you know, don't. But for me, it doesn't really make a difference. So that's, you know, perhaps why. But today we will learn. Today I will open up Google and be like, which hand, knife, fork in, because I Google like a caveman. According to US cut and switch etiquette, diners begin with a fork in their left hand and the knife in their right. But after they cut whatever they're about to eat, the knife is put down and the fork is transferred to the right hand. What? So it turns out my fork transferring thing, which I thought was bad manners, is actually technically the actual manners you're meant to do. American versus Europe ways? Excuse me? American involves holding a fork in your left hand, knife in your right. When cutting your food and putting the knife down, switching to fork to your right hand to eat, tines facing upwards. Only if you're right-handed. With the European method, the fork remains in your left hand and the knife helps cook food onto your fork. Tines remain facing downwards. Actually, that's true, because if I still have a knife in my hand, I'm not going to transfer and swap them. But if I put down the knife, then I will. What on earth am I doing? I've somehow picked up these. Okay, so clearly I've picked up these table manners at some point, but I just don't remember the origin story for them. What on earth is this? Lately, I've noticed that more Americans are adopting the European style. I don't think it's more Americans adopting the European style. I think it's most people don't even know this is a thing in the first place. Did I pick up the recipe? What? Did I just run past it? Don't know it's a thing, and it's just, you know, they just choose to continue holding a knife and fork to use it. It probably doesn't go that deep, I'd certainly say. The European style was also known as the hidden handle, my word. I also thought, something else I also noticed, is the fact I hold a knife and fork, I hold a fork differently in both my hands, you know? You know, like how you write with a pen, there's like 4 different grips, the 4 different basic grips. So obviously there's more than just the 4 basic grips, but like the most common grips are like, it's a three finger hold, the 3 finger like, there's one where it's a hold where your fingers arch, there's one where you're gripping and your fingers are like concave, and there's one where you do it with 4 fingers and one where you do it with 4 fingers concave again. I hold my pens, hold on, let me get a pen. I do it with a concave way with 4 fingers in my right hand, but my left hand I do it with 3 fingers, a non-concave way, and I don't know why. I mean, well, maybe it is concave or maybe it's not concave. But there might be actual. This like whole conversation is owned by pen grip, but we're sticking with knife and fork for now. Maybe if I remember tomorrow, we'll do pen grips. Like pen grip methods? There's like 4 different ways, I swear. Apparently they're named for the different ways people hold a pen. Well, I don't even know what this bizarre way is, but dynamic tripod, dynamic quadrupod, lateral tripod, lateral quadrupod. Wait, what do I do? Sorry about that little bit of a pause, but turns out, you know, the world of pen grips is even more like advanced out there, but we'll get onto that maybe tomorrow if I remember. Fork and knife, you know, table manners, that sort of thing. Like, anyway, so why does it matter hand, fork, knife? Is it okay in formal table etiquette to use knife in my left hand? Formal table manners anywhere but the US require that you hold a knife in your right hand. Things that can't simply be stabbed and picked up, like vegetable purees, are pushed onto the back of a fork with a knife. And I know, but like, why? Where did it come from? Times are changing. The hands you use no longer matter. Hold on. British table manners origin. History of table manners. Thanks, Guardian. Apparently you got an article. Damn everything. Which is the same thing, I suppose, as me, you know, having an Animal Crossing video and everything. Excuse my language, I suppose. Table set in the 18th century. Cloth was laid over table. There's also another table manners thing, which you might not know if you haven't, unless you've been to a particularly fancy dinner with multiple course meals and you get multiple forks and knives, is you work, I believe, from the outside inwards with fork and knife. With a cutlery. So if, you know, for a starter, use the outside fork and knife, and then for like whatever, the entree, use the middle fork and knife, and then for like your main meal, the second middle fork and knife, and then, you know, whatever. Depends on how many meals you get, you know. I've not been to a dinner where I've had like 7 forks and knives, like, you know, that's outrageous. But I have been to one where I've had like 3 or 4 maybe, I don't really remember. Look, The Guardian, thank you for writing this and all, but like, this article's too long. Just be like, oh, it was invented in the 18th century because of whatever. Oh, table manners, Wikipedia, here we are. Oh my god, it's so long. And I don't mind reading long things, but I am in, you know, Animal Crossing video right now. Oh yeah, I was meant to face my microphone. Okay, so I'll just sort of sit behind my microphone a bit. And then it still probably sounds a little bit different because my microphone is a directional microphone. So, napkins should be placed on my lap and not tucked into clothing. I mean, that's fine. Like, I mean, I wouldn't care if you tucked it into clothing, but putting it on your lap just kind of makes sense because, you know, that's kind of what it's for. You know, to, like, catch your food or whatever. Fork is held with a left hand, knife with right hand. Fork is generally held with tines down, as the spokes on the fork. Using a knife to cut food or help guide food. A fork with no knife is meaning fork can be held with tines up. With the tines up, the fork balances on the side of an index finger held in place with a thumb and index finger. Under no circumstance should a fork be held like a shovel. What's like a shovel? Like this, like a shovel? Wait, hold on. How do I normally hold a fork? Like this? Yeah, I hold a fork like this, right? No, hold on. This is a knife. Like this is like a shovel? Okay, right. So a shovel would be like, it's not on your balance with your thumb anymore. Your thumb is wrapped around it. Okay, I don't do that, I will say. 4 fingers wrapped around the base. A single mouthful of food should be lifted onto the fork, and you should not chew or bite food from the fork. What? You don't chew or bite food from a fork, so you don't stab things with a fork. What? The fork should be a spoon then. Oh, I guess you still need to stab it to cut it. The knife should be held with a base into the palm of a hand and not like a pen. Not like a pen. How would you cut anything with like that? With a base resting between thumb and forefinger. The knife must never enter the mouth or be licked. Okay. When eating soup, the spoon is held in right hand and the bowl tipped away from the diner, scooping the soup in outward movements. What? Well, I don't do this, so, clearly I've never learnt my table manners. The soup spoon should never be put into the mouth, and the soup should be sipped from the side of a spoon, not the end. Oh, okay, I see. Then held in right hand. Well, it doesn't say how to hold the spoon. Like, do I hold it like a pen? Do I hold it like a shovel? Do I hold it like the same way I hold a fork? Food should always be chewed with mouth closed. Talking with food one mouth, very rude. Licking one's fingers and eating slowly can also be considered impolite. Of course, if I'm in the company of my friends, I don't really care what you do all that much. About that sort of thing. But, if I'm with just like acquaintances about things, generally follow the table manners, that sort of thing. Food should always be tasted before salt and pepper are added. I don't know, there's so many rules to this. What on earth? Citation needed on some of these. Pouring one's own drink and others acceptable is impolite to reach over. Elbows should remain off the table. But where do these come from? Why does table manners in North America have its own article? Like Indian, Chinese table manners. It's all different in different cultures, Just as Western cultures, common utensils, chopsticks and spoons are used to bring food from communal dishes to individuals' own bowl. Oh yeah, that's a thing in, I mentioned before, in Chinese cuisine a lot of time, it's not everyone gets their own individual meal. It's basically, you get your own like bowl of rice or whatever, then all the meals are just there in the center. And I can tell you these like an individual manners. You use chopsticks to like pick up your own food, using the thin end. But when you grab them from the center area, flip your chopsticks around, so you're using the thicker end of them to bring them in, because that's, not been in your mouth. The thin part's been in your mouth, the thick part's not been in your mouth. So you use that in the communal things. And the thin part you use for your own food. I wonder if that says that. Rude and unhygienic for diners use their own chopsticks. That's also true. Like, and a lot of the times they'll actually give you chopsticks and spoons for the dishes in the middle. Use those if you have them. If you don't, then, which, you most of the time at home you won't, then you, like, flip your chopsticks over. If you're eating with family, I don't think family will care, but, just like at someone else's house or something. Other rude behaviours, playing with chopsticks, okay. Separating them in any way, such as holding one in each hand. Okay, I see. I was like, what? Separating them in any way? It's like we're kind of separated in your hand. Piercing food with them. Okay, fair enough. Standing them vertically in a plate of food. The latter is especially rude, evoking images of incense. Yes, that's true. In like funerals or like something like that. A rice bowl may be lifted in one hand to scoop rice into mouth. Yes, you can. With chopsticks, it's also considered rude to look for a piece one would prefer on the plate instead of picking up the piece closest to the diner. Yes, that is actually a true thing. I don't know if this wasn't a true thing in Western things as well. But yeah, it's rude to be in the communal foods. It's rude to basically look through them and pick out the piece you want. Just grab whatever you is closest to you, most convenient, or what would be sensible for you to grab, and eat that. Last piece of food in communal dish is never served to oneself without asking permission. Also true. All of these things. I'm still getting flashbacks of when I went back to China and we ate out with like friends and family friends and that sort of thing. Considered virtuous for diners not to leave any bit of food on their plates or bowls. Also, weird emphasis on that in Chinese cuisine and culture, but, fair enough, but where do these come from? Like, hold on. British table manners history, maybe. British table manager? Manners. Okay, I'm not reading the Guardian article. I'm reading dining etiquette history from the etiquette scholar. Okay, this you got to be there. 13th century, maybe. 15th, 16th century modern table manners. But do we just like so? Unsurprisingly, it is something from like aristocrats just being like, oh, this is how it should be when you eat a dining meal. Probably, it's like some random arbitrary rules which you're meant to learn or whatever. And if you don't do them, then you're not part of a cool high class society or something, and you'll be shunned forever, which is just like one of those weird like social things which end up happening. The fact that they still carried on to today is a wild fact in of itself. Oh my god, it's nearly been 20 minutes. So I don't know, table manners. Well, okay. So if we're gonna give a ranking of table manners, which ones are most important? Number one, don't chew with your mouth open, that sort of thing, you know. Well, I guess number one is like, don't be a horrible person, maybe. So, you know, like, don't do anything outside. But, you know, that's kind of like a given. Like, if restricting to table manners himself, don't chew with your mouth open. Don't, I don't know. I don't really care what sort of like way around you use your knife and fork. To be honest, do whatever. I don't care if the tines are pointing upwards or downwards. I don't really care how you hold it, as long as it's, you know, you can still use it as the way you're holding it and it doesn't like impede you. Yeah, I don't know. Just don't chew with your mouth open. Don't spit your food everywhere, and that's all good. But anyway, we're going to round off this episode here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Any likes, comments, subscription, shares are greatly appreciated. Join me Dear Darling Discord, follow me on Twitter down below. Hope we see each other again. But for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye bye for now.